Hello again, and welcome to a financial thought leadership podcast, Banking on Experience, sponsored by CRMNEXT, the banking CRM, where we simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience. This podcast is meant to empower individuals working in the financial industry with stories, experiences, and knowledge straight from the source. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and stay tuned for an awesome show. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. I'm your host, James Gilbert. We are joined by Sara Freeman, who is the VP of Business Development at Truity Credit Union. Sara, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Today, we're going to be learning about turning your networking into a community building exercise. So this is something that you told me you were really passionate about. But before we get into the topic, I always like to ask my guests a fun little question to kind of start off with. Let's see here. Tell us about your most memorable vacation experience.
You know, I would probably maybe say in 2017, I had the opportunity to go to Ireland. Actually, with my credit union, we had a senior travel club and they needed an extra but an extra credit union person to go with the group. And my husband and I had the privilege of going, and it was just unbelievable, over the top trip that we would never in our lives, think that we would get to do. And it was amazing.
So, Ireland's on my bucket list. So you beat me to it. I got to ask, because we kind of share some hint of red in our heritage. So do you have some lineage from Ireland at all?
Well, I predominantly actually English and Welsh,
okay,
but a little bit. I need to kind of do one of those DNA ancestry things to kind of figure more of that out.
Yeah, I'd definitely be curious. You'll have to let me know how that goes. Let's talk about networking. Why are you passionate about this topic?
I was kind of thinking about that prior to today. I think probably mostly out of necessity. Just almost 20 years ago, it'll be 20 years later in 22, I moved to the town that I'm in now, which is Bartlesville, Oklahoma. I'm about 40 miles outside of Tulsa. And I was brand new to this town and didn't know anyone except the person I moved here to be with. And I had to start networking and getting out there to figure out what I was going to do, for my life, for work, for social, all the things. And so I really just, like I said, started out of necessity, and then found that I really enjoyed connecting with people and then helping them connect with others. So that's kind of when it turned into a passion for me.
So let's talk about specifically as it relates to credit unions. How can credit unions help build a proper network?
I think that we do a lot of things for our members that help them in ways to network already, right? So for example, in business development, a new business comes to town, I go to greet them, tell them about our services. And then while I'm there, they mention something else they might need. And so then I want to help them get in touch with someone else. We talk a lot about people want to do business with people they know, or with people that someone they know knows, right? So it's really easy in a credit union role to kind of help make some of those connections.
Yeah, and you kind of have been alluding to this a little bit, but community plays a big role in that. Let's blow that up a little bit and kind of make it even bigger. You go and do these in-person visits with new businesses, and you find out that they have a need, and then you want to try to help them with it. That's part of community. So how can credit unions kind of bridge this gap of community while they're helping build their network?
So I think it's really about identifying needs and making sure that we're providing solutions, right? And that's not just from a credit union to a member perspective, but like you said, in the community. So for example, our credit union really gets involved in a lot of sponsorships for our nonprofits. We do some grants, we do things like that. So we try and bring all these different pieces of the community together so that we're serving our population the very best we can.
Before we got on live, we were talking about loyalty. That's a really strong word, right? But in today's world, loyalty matters very little and convenience matters a lot more. Talk to the audience, talk to me a little bit about that idea. and how this can actually help foster loyalty as well as convenience.
Right. So, and it kind of goes back to what I said about people do business with people they know. I think you're going to create more loyalty by giving people a great referral or connecting them with a resource than you are by just saying, "Oh, I work for such and such place, and don't you want to be loyal to us because we've been here for a really long time?" That doesn't seem to ring true, especially with our members. We're also located, one of our major markets is a university town. And I don't know if you know much about college students, but their loyalty is not with financial institutions. It's with whoever's going to give them, the next best thing. So by working with networks, for example, in that market, we work with the Student Alumni Association. So we kind of help sponsor their activities and work with them. So we're creating a network, not just for us with those students, but with those students amongst each other, right? Help them understand that building a network and knowing people can really help you in the long run, so that you can be more connected.
I've always been a big believer that one of the strongest components of networking is giving first. If you give first, it's much easier to ask for something in return. And
Sure.
you're in turn, when you're giving and you're serving, you're naturally creating some loyalty there. And it becomes a lot more convenient for you to also weave that into the conversation. Many people at a credit union worry about that, right? Because they worry about that sort of sales mentality and asking for something. And I think that naturally when you're giving, that's just, in my mind, that's core to some of what networking is all about. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. So we really try and give with a servant's heart, for lack of business term there. But we want to serve our employees, our communities, our members, our not members, because we believe that if we're continuing to serve and make those connections, then eventually those people will come back and choose to do business with us at some point. Another great piece of the networking and the community is finding ways to have collaboration. I've worked on many, many nonprofit boards and have had the great opportunity to network amongst those boards, but also to see the overlap and the duplication of services that some do. So we really try and focus on where can we give, where we're seeing collaboration from organizations or people, so that we're eliminating that duplication and making sure that we're providing, the best with our dollars, not just for our credit union benefit, but for our members and the people that are benefiting from those grants as well.
Providing value outside of what people see on the surface, I think, is amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about one of the most challenging parts about networking, and that's getting out of your comfort zone. What do you think are just one or two things that people can do to try to get out of that comfort zone, kind of break down the wall that they might feel?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One thing that I always try and encourage people to remember is that, especially with LinkedIn right now, right? So people are like, I'm going to connect with everybody. And I have 800 connections and I've got a great network. Well, if you can't pick up the phone and call one of those people and have them even slightly know who you are, then that's not necessarily the connection that you want to be making. So sometimes being outside your box is trying to have that authentic communication and contact with that person. So putting a note in that connect box. Here's who I am. Here's why I would like to connect with you. Here's someone that we have in common. And they mentioned that you do such and such, and I'd love to talk to you more about that. So you have to kind of be willing to say, here's who I am, and here's what I'm looking for. Is there a space for us to connect? I can't tell you how much it makes me crazy when people want to connect with me and they obviously don't know anything about what I do because they're barking up the wrong tree, or they spell my name wrong, or, just some basic things that you have to remember to kind of do your due diligence before you try and connect with people.
I couldn't agree more. It drives me wild to get the amount of requests. LinkedIn is especially is true in LinkedIn. You get so many different requests and so many different emails, and people just don't do the research anymore. And I think that's a big part. One of the things that you had mentioned that I know that we haven't talked about yet is the 360 program.
That's one of my favorite connection and networking things. It's a program that I started at my credit union gosh, maybe 13 years ago now. I've been here for 13 or 14 years ago. And basically through some of our partners in our communities, we go in and offer what we call a 360 class for their employees. So we want their employees to learn about the communities where they are and where they're living and working so that they can become more engaged. So we go in and we bring them actually most often on site to the credit union, to one of our meeting spaces. And we talk to them about, how do you get registered to vote? What does your city council look like? What kind of education opportunities are there here in town to further your education? We do a housing update. We talk about, what's the community like? Where can you volunteer? All these different kinds of things. And we help them grow their network so that they feel more connected. Because again, the longer you stay here, the better the chances are that you're going to do business with me along the way. At the beginning of the class, we ask them, tell me something that you really like to do that's outside of work. And I make a note of those as we go through the introductions. And by the end of the class, I try and have touched on something for every single person in that class through our conversations and our speakers and all that kind of stuff during the day, so that they all feel like there's been a connection made and there's something there for them. It's great. I love it. They're some of my favorite people that I've met in the community too.
And it's a give first mentality, which is, again, back to that. I think core to networking is that give first. It's interesting too, because when I've reached out to people that I've wanted to connect with, and I always try to offer something first to try to help in some way, right? And it's interesting how many people are so grateful that you take the time out of your day just to do that simple little gesture of trying to give something before you ask.
But I think too, also, a lot of people that are new to an industry or new to working, maybe they're just out of college, they may not feel like they have a lot to give, right? Well, what can I give with this executive that I want to connect with? Well, shift it around and just say, I'd like to learn from you. I'd like to follow you because I'm striving to grow in this industry. And I want to see how you do it, see how you've been successful. And so those people may not have anything to give per se, but they're certainly being direct about what they're trying to do and trying to just build that network a little bit that they have within whatever it is that they do.
I like the fact that we were talking about this LinkedIn stuff. I want to kind of come back to that for just a second. There was an episode that we did a little while ago with the CEO at Allegiance Credit Union. Her name's Amy Downs. I don't know if you're familiar with Amy Downs, but she's fantastic. And she called it pitch slapped. It was a really funny play on terms, but she was telling this story about how there was a sales rep that reached out to her. And again, to your point, it had no context. The message was just real bad and there was no homework done. Well, I also think that there's also a give mentality on the receiving end of this stuff too, which is, even if something misses the mark, remember the greatest thing we can do in today's world is to be kind to others and realize that everybody's hustling, everybody's trying to do their best. And I love the way that Amy put it. She's like, rather than like getting angry or like sending them a note back or ignoring them, I just sent them a quick note and I said, hey, this was the wrong approach. Maybe let's try this. And let me tell you why. And they actually ended up developing a relationship and doing business with each other. And I think that there's real truth to that in our networking opportunities, that you might catch somebody, you might think your message is perfect, and you might think you've done all of your homework, but you might catch them at the wrong time. Realize everybody's human. And so you also have to realize on the other end that there sometimes has to be a give mentality from us when we're receiving it. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I totally think there are opportunities where you catch people and they're just having a bad day or they're just a little bit off, and to be, like you said, to be kind and to be gracious with people, because you may have some information that you can offer that could be helpful to them so that they can do it better. I certainly have had people that have contacted me in various ways that I've said, and a lot of it is, so I do the donations and sponsorships for our credit union. And if they send something that's just way off the mark for us, a lot of times I'll message back and say, I'm so sorry, but this isn't in the space where we would be giving to you. Or, it's really nice that you sent this, but hey, you sent this in January, and in January, my budget's done and I haven't given to you before. So could you send this to me later in the year? So I think like just taking a minute to give people some feedback is certainly helpful, and people appreciate it. They don't want to keep doing the same thing and not getting a reply. So if you give them something to work off of, and like you said, you never know. I mean, I met a guy on an airplane flying from Seattle back to Oklahoma one time. And come to find out, he worked for a company that sold like credit union benefits, like 401k plans or something. I don't remember. And we had this whole conversation about it. And I connected him with our HR VP when I got back. And, they ended up doing a little business together at some point, I think. But you just never know who you're going to meet and where and how that's going to work out.
I want to come back because you just brought up another really good point. I want to come back to breaking down the walls and getting out of your comfort zone. Here's a challenge, and you can give a challenge too, but I'd like to give a challenge to our audience. If you're trying to grow your network, the next time you're traveling, whether you're on a bus going somewhere, whether you're on a train going somewhere, whether you're on a plane going somewhere, whether you're sitting and waiting, whatever it might be, just try striking up a conversation with the person next to you. It will get you out of your comfort zone to be able to put yourself out there more and more and more. And the more you're comfortable doing that, the more you're going to be able to find ways in which you can connect with people. So that's my challenge to our listeners, is try it. Next time you're waiting, no matter where you're waiting, even if it's at the doctor's office with the mask on, like, do it, right? Strike up a conversation. You'd be surprised what you can learn from people.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. And it's funny because I joined recently a CUNA Marketing and Business Development Council to try and grow my network, right? Because I know that I need to connect more with people in the credit union industry. And it's been great. I've worked on a couple committees. I've met people from all over, and I'll actually travel to LA in the spring for their conference. And I'll be the only one from my credit union that goes. And so once I get there, I'm kind of on my own to meet up with people, and conferences can be a little intimidating, even with forced networking opportunities, which sometimes are awful and sometimes are great. But I mean, anytime you can make yourself just step out of the box a little bit is always a good thing. Sometimes people look at networking too far out, right? Don't forget to look just around you. There's lots of people that we know in our life that we interact with all the time that we may not think of as part of our network because they're my neighbor, or they're my kid's teacher, or they're my doctor, or my husband's golf partner, whatever. Those people can still be in your network and can still help you make connections or be beneficial to you in some way at some point if you continue to offer them things and then see if they reciprocate.
That's actually something that I've never really thought about in that way. So I appreciate you saying that. So let's finish the episode with one of my favorite questions. You're given any amount of money, any amount of resources. How are you going to change the world?
Oh, the world. Wow. Did you tell me we were going to talk about that? I don't even know that it's money. I don't know that there's enough money to make some of the changes that I would see or that I would want to see. I just want people to recognize that we have more in common than we do things that separate us. I just am astonished with the divide that I see sometimes in everything. Everything is so conflict and polar opposites and this way or that way, or whatever it is. And I don't think that that's what's really important. And I feel like people are missing the boat of what life should be about. So maybe this is way too philosophical for what you were asking, but I just want people to be more open to the idea that they can connect, even if they don't agree. It's funny because this morning I watched Good Morning America, and recently Michael Strahan took the rocket up into space. I don't remember which rocket it is, but anyway. And they asked him afterwards, what were you thinking? Did it change your perspective? And instead of being like, oh, I saw the Earth, or I went to space, or all those kinds of things, he said, it changed my perspective because it made me realize how much I really care about the people here that I was going to see. or that I had to like say goodbye to before I went to get on the rocket ship, and how vulnerable I had to be in that moment. And then really thinking about how completely not in control I was in that situation. And there's so many things that we all try and control, whether it's our thoughts, our actions, the things around us, our kids, our families. And he was like, I had no control. And I realized that I just love people and want to get back to that. So it's that mushy stuff that really kind of matters in the long run, I think.
Sara, that was a wonderful answer. I couldn't have put it any better myself. Honestly, I truly think the same thing. So where can people reach Sara?
I am, according to a lot of people, way too active on Facebook. So I'm like a Facebook, OG, I think. But I'm also on LinkedIn, Sara Freeman. I'm on Instagram as a menu planning mama. I have a little hobby that I like to plan menus and talk to people about meal planning, not meal prep. Don't be confused. I'm not one of those people. But so yeah, I guess you would say pretty easy to find everywhere.
Awesome. I'm gonna have my wife follow you on Instagram because I'm sure that she could use some of your tips and tricks. She's really good at that stuff too. So she's always looking for people to follow. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sara. We appreciate it.